One of the questions I have received a lot over the years is, well, if you believe in God, where did God come from? Or who made God? And of course, the secularists will say, well, is there really a God? They don't believe there's a God. So, how would we answer that question? Is there really a God? How would we know that there's a God? Where did God come from if there is a God? The Bible starts off this way: in the beginning, God created. You notice something? It doesn't set out to prove the existence of God. It just says God is. God exists. And as you read through Scripture, the God of the Bible is a God who lives in eternity outside of time. In fact, when it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, in the beginning God created time. So God doesn't exist in time. That's why 2 Peter 3 says that with God, a day is like 1,000 years, or 1,000 years is like a day, because God is not limited by natural processes and time. God is outside of time. So the biblical God exists in eternity. Now, how do we understand that? Well, we're finite beings. We're created beings. We will never understand that. We never can, because to us, everything has a beginning, because the universe had a beginning. Time had a beginning, and we're created in time. We're created in this universe. Therefore, to us, everything has to have a beginning. So we cannot, as finite beings that had a beginning, understand an eternal God who has no beginning. But let's think about it this way. I had a little boy once who came up to me at a conference and he said, "Mr. Ham, who made God?" And I said, "Well, son, if somebody made God, you have to have a bigger God who made God, right?" And he said, "Well, yes, sir." I said, "Now I've got a problem." "Yes, sir." "Well, who made the bigger God? You have to have a bigger God who made the bigger God who made God, right?" "Well, yes, sir." I said, "Now you have a problem." He said, "I know." "Who made the bigger God?" "You have to have a bigger God who made the big God who made the big God who made God, right?" "Yes, sir." I said, "Now you got a problem." I know," he said. "See," I said, "you could go back and have a bigger God and a bigger God and a bigger God and a bigger God. You keep going back till you've got to get to the biggest God of all, which means the God who exists in eternity, the God who's outside of time. That's the only thing that makes logical sense. Nothing else makes sense. Think about it from a secularist perspective. Why does matter even exist? Where did matter come from? When I debated Bill Nye in 2014, one of the questions asked was, where did matter come from? And his answer was, I don't know, it's a mystery. And I said, well, Bill, we have a book that tells us where matter came from. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He created matter. You see, what does secularists believe? That matter has eternally existed, or matter came from nowhere for no reason, or that energy has always been there, or space has always been there, or time has always been there? Where did it come from? Why does any of this exist? None of it makes sense, except you have an eternal God who's outside of time, who is infinite in knowledge and wisdom, who created all things just as the Bible tells us. You know, it's interesting. I heard Richard Dawkins once asked about, a life on Earth and so on, and he suggested the idea that there could have been life on another planet that brought life to Earth and seeded life on Earth. But then the question is, where did that life on the other planet come from? Did other aliens seed that planet with life, so then they would come to this planet and seed this with life? And then where did they come from? Then were there other aliens? It's interesting. I think fallible man would believe in eternal aliens, but not an eternal God. Why would they do that? Because to believe in God is to understand that he created us, he created all things, therefore he owns us, therefore he sets the rules, therefore he decides what's right and what's wrong, and we don't want that. We have a sinful nature, we're in rebellion against God, so we'll believe in eternal matter, we'll believe in eternal big bangs, we'll believe in eternal energy or eternal something, but we don't want to believe in an eternal God. One other little interesting thing to point out. DNA is the most complex information language system in the entire universe, and life is built on DNA. And there's no way DNA could come about by chance, because we've never seen matter produce one bit of information. We've never seen matter produce a language system. There are zillions of bits of information in living things in this world. It's absurd to believe that life could have arose by natural processes. But you know, it's interesting. You'll see an archaeologist that'll go into a cave and they'll find an arrowhead. And they'll say, oh, there was life here. Look, you can tell. Intelligence. Intelligence made this into an arrowhead. It just hasn't eroded as a stone. It's actually had intelligence imposed upon it. That's why it looks like an arrowhead. And they'll say, intelligence was here. And yet they'll look at DNA, the most complex information system in the entire universe, and say, oh, no intelligence happened by chance random processes. Oh, it's so inconsistent, totally inconsistent. Man just doesn't want to believe in God because of our sinful nature. In the beginning, God created. That makes sense of everything.